Hello guys, Mr. Silk here with Erik Carlberg, also known as Ablaze from Mystery Team. And today we are going to talk about how to approach women. There are so many factors that there are within approaching women. Factors like the mindset, how to deal with the approach anxiety, and the opener itself. It has also different venues to actually approach women. The location is also a big factor. Some people are very satisfied with day game, talking to women walking down the street or at the shopping mall. Some other guys really want to, approach women at bars, pubs, and night venues. So today we are going to give you great tips on how to actually get started to approach women, what to think about, and also depending on which venues you are choosing. So welcome back to my channel, Erik. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me again. No, I'm doing great. It's always a pleasure to be on your podcasts here.
Great to have you, man. So one of the biggest hurdle I've seen for guys that want to start approaching women. So first, I want to tell you that most guys can't do it. They want to do it, but they never get over that hurdle to actually doing it. And I feel that is because of the mindset to start with. It's very, very important to really focus on the mindset before you approach. If I would actually put two important variables when it comes to guys who actually want to approach women, I will actually put the first one, the mindset, and the second one, the competence itself. So when we're thinking about approaching women, it's not only to go up and deliver an opening line. You have to know how to communicate as well after the opener itself. So with that said, in this podcast we have now, we're just going to straight focus on the approach itself. I just wanted to, get this one out in the air that it's not only about approaching, it's also how you can communicate and how confident you are communicating after the approach. But now when we're talking about the approach itself, one of the most important thing, mindset wise, is to tell yourself why you are approaching. One of my biggest advice for guys that want to start to approach women is to get them to feel like, I am going to approach this woman because I want to. There is no other excuses. It's because I want to. You don't need any excuse. The only excuse you need is because you want to. So I'm very curious to hear what Erik has to say about what he's doing to make guys being able to approach women. So tell us, Erik.
There are many different ways to get a guy in the right headspace. I do believe that the bulk of approach anxiety is worked out through action. I do believe in doing some prep work. I do believe in doing mindset work, but then I still believe that no matter how much we try to lower a guy's approach anxiety in advance of approaching, he's still likely going to feel some residual nerves. And what I want him to know first and foremost is that it's normal. I actually think it's more normal to feel approach anxiety than to not feel it at all. That's a first mindset shift, is when guys get approach anxiety, they think, oh, there's something wrong with me. No, you're actually functioning properly if you have a little bit of nerves, right? I'm a fan of reframing approach anxiety, as in your fear is not telling you not to approach. Your fear is telling you to approach, but to do so in a vigilant manner. Be respectful, be aware of your surroundings, don't just mindlessly approach. So the first thing I want a guy to understand is that it's normal to feel approach anxiety. And then along the lines of what you were saying as well, one of the things that I have a guy do as well is take a positive intention inventory. Can you write out, you can do it mentally if you want to, but sometimes there's the added benefit of actually writing something out. Can you write out all the reasons why you want to approach this woman, and what are your intentions? Do you have intentions of just taking value from her? Are you thinking only about what you can get out of the interaction? Well, maybe you're going to feel a little weird and creepy, right? If you're normal, if you're a sociopath, maybe you won't feel weird and creepy thinking that way. But if you're a normal person, you're going to need to flesh out why you're doing this, you know. And I love what you said about approaching because you want to. That's a good precedent to set as well. You know, you don't want to set the wrong precedent. It's like building a house on the wrong foundation. So there are many, many different things to do in advance to help a guy with his mindset. But one is to understand that it's normal. It's more normal than not feeling it, right? Um, and then, like you said, kind of getting clear on your intentions. Why do you want to talk to her? Why do you want to approach her? I could go on. I have more tactics if you want me to keep going, but those are a couple quick ones there for you.
We're going to get into that part later on in this,
Okay. All right.
more about the techniques and so on. But I completely agree with you when it comes to the, what can I say, is the taking action part that is the most important. And many times people can have, a lot of guys can have work with themselves in the really right manner, and yet they can't take action. And what I notice is that once they start taking the first step of approaching the first woman, the second one become a lot easier. So it's really like the first approached woman that is so crucial for the guys to be able to continue doing it. So
Yes.
there is approach anxiety, and that one can be pretty strong. And many times when I look into what approach anxiety actually is, it's basically two things. It's fear and also the feeling of being awkward. So we have this feeling of being awkwardness, like it's awkward to go and start talking to strangers, especially if it is a beautiful woman. So if we are just going to talk about the fear, which is substantial before guys approach women, there is an opportunity at you to teach my clients to do, and that to think, and that opportunity is the opportunity to be brave and courageous. If there is no fear, then there is no opportunity to be brave and to be courageous.
Hmm.
So being scared and having fear about something and then doing it anyway, despite that fear and hesitation, what does that
Mhm.
makes you? It makes you courageous. If guys can make a conscious decision to be courageous, what happens? Suddenly they have a direction of actually doing something, and that is to be courageous. So that is also one of the big mindset part that I've seen worked beautifully with a lot of men. That is one
Yeah,
of
no,
the things.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I dedicate a really, really good chunk of my soon to be released book to approach anxiety. And I talk about courage. You know, courage is basically action in spite of fear, right? It's not the absence of fear, it's action in spite of fear. So I agree 100%. You know, at the very fundamental level is a fear of the unknown. You know, that is natural to fear the unknown, things that you've never experienced before. And I think what's going on there too is a risk reward miscalculation. Humans tend to have a negativity bias, right? It's more important to defend yourself from an invading army than to remember where the nice water is for drinking. You know, that's maybe a bad example because water is very
Yeah.
fundamental to life, right? We do want to know where the clean drinking water is, but humans have a negativity bias, right? So we tend to make this risk reward miscalculation when we see a woman. We think it's going to be more awkward than it's going to be. Maybe it is going to be awkward, but it's probably not going to be, you know, life-ending awkwardness. It may just be a little bit awkward until you get the hang of it, until you get comfortable with it. You may get rejected, but it's probably not going to hurt that bad. And oftentimes we regret more not approaching than approaching. So this is another key that I try to get guys to understand. I liken it to jujitsu training. So I train jujitsu. Every time I go to class, I go, "Oh, man, I'm going to be army crawling up and down the mat. I'm going to be rolling around with sweaty guys. It's going to be really exhausting." And almost every single time I go to jujitsu, I'm happy that I went. 99% of the time. And I found that the ratios are very similar with talking to women. When I see a woman that I want to talk to, or let me speak past tense because I'm engaged now, but when I would see a woman I wanted to talk to, if I went and talked to her, 99% of the time I was happy that I did. So if I'm a betting man, that means when you're feeling approach anxiety, if you do it, you're probably going to be happy that you did it, even if it doesn't go your way. But I love what you said about that positive orientation to moving someone towards courage, as opposed to away from fear. You're moving them to courage. That's very insightful.
Yeah, it is absolutely. I mean, as you said, it's, I mean, being courageous, fear has to be there. Without fear, you're not courageous. Many guys got this wrong. Like, they want to get over approach anxiety, meaning that I don't feel any anxiety at all. So I can just go
Mhm.
and approach any woman without feeling anything. That is not being courageous. That is also taking away the charm of approaching, taking away the sort of the romantic process when you're actually going up and saying hi to a woman that you find
Mhm.
attractive. It must be some tension. It must be some anxiety to make it, you know, to make it meaningful. You see? So many guys get this one wrong as well. They think that we as coaches don't feel anything when we approach women. Almost like we have trained away that fear. That is not true. We always feel something when we see that woman that we find really attractive, and we actually going to go up and say hi to her, start talking to her. Of course, we feel something as well. We feel anxiety. We feel a certain level, a certain amount of fear, level amount of fear, and but the difference between us and people that haven't done that before is that we can easily handle the fear by being courageous, and we also have the amount of approaches in the past that actually making us knowing how it is. That's also a big factor, but fear will always be there, anxiety will always be there. So I think when guys knows that this is something that we cannot really train away, it's more like how we can handle the fear. Guys get into this realization that, yeah, maybe it's normal to be, a little bit scared, having, the anxiety, approach anxiety. Maybe
Mm.
that's normal. I think that is one of the better explanation I giving my clients when they believe that is something wrong with them because they feel extreme anxiety when they go to approach. It's almost like they think that they are the only one that actually have it, but it's not true. Everyone has it.
Yeah, and it's useful energy when you transform it properly. It's like a wave, a surfer riding a wave. That wave can take you under, or you can get above it and ride that wave, and that wave can take you places. So when you transform your approach anxiety, it can be electric. It can actually pressurize the interaction in a good way. And women can sense when a guy is kind of desensitized to his fear, or when he's running away from his fear, or he's transformed his fear into, really talkative energy or something. This is not, in my opinion, the proper use of fear. Um, yeah, it's something to be channeled, it's something to be harnessed. And when you channel it properly and harness it the right way, the interaction is better. It's more full, it's more complete. There's obviously the extreme of that. If your fear is crippling your ability to talk and you're trembling and you can't make any moves at all, this is when fear has run amok, right? But
Mm,
the proper amount of fear harnessed and contained is powerful.
absolutely. I totally agree with that. And then another mindset that I found very, very useful is that to accept that not every single woman is available. There are many factors in her life that makes her unavailable. One of them is that she's married, is a pretty obvious reason. Another one is that she's in love with her current boyfriend, or she have a boyfriend that she really really like, and they are currently dating. They are like in this beginning of the dating process, and yet they're together. I mean, most of the time those women won't be available. I don't buy at all the way of trying to get a woman who has a boyfriend and trying to be a better man so she can, in some way break up with the current boyfriend that she likes very much because you are even cooler guy. I don't buy that at all. And I don't want you to get into that toxic mentality either. So with that said, you're going to have a lot of women that are available and a lot of women that are not available. But how can we filter that, how can we filter out those women that are available and go with women that are, and don't think so much about the women that are not available? Well, it's the quantity of women that you have to go and talk to. So it's not only that particular woman that you're going to talk to, and it's a make it or break it situation in life. No, you have to go through X amount of women to see which one is available and which one are not available. You have to go through that filter process, and just knowing that helps guys quite a lot as well to being able to actually go to that first woman, because they know that they most likely have to go to a quantity of women before they can find someone that really fits them and that can also reciprocate the excitement and the liking back. What do you say about that?
100%. Yeah, there's a certain amount of unavailable women that it's a fact. It's a fact of life, and I'm always tickled when I hear people talk about their closing ratios, how many women did they approach versus how many phone numbers they got. And I hear some guys talk about over 50%. And I'm thinking to myself, that does not add up to my experience. That does not add up to my clients' experiences. That does not add up to the other coaches that I know in the industry that are very qualified, good coaches. That does not add up to the experience of even a lot of the good naturals that I know. If you approach 10 women, you are not getting 6 or 7 phone numbers out of 10, right? The only way that's happening is if you are being extremely choosy in your approaches. You are cherry picking your approaches, and you have really, really good game, and you are completely reframing all of your rejections as something else. So that girl didn't actually reject me. That was an anomalous approach. That one doesn't count. If you're not cherry picking your approaches, as in you're not trying to be super selective and you're just talking to women that you want to talk to, there's a rejection rate there that's there's no avoiding it. There's no getting around it, because like you said, there are quite a few women that are in relationships, serious relationships, semi-serious relationships, even a guy they're just talking to that maybe they're not so sure about just yet. They still may prefer to channel their energy into that guy. And we can only do so much to overcome that. And how much should we even try to overcome that? Do we want to be home wreckers? Oh yeah, you really love your husband. You think you love your husband, but really, you're gonna go try and ruin a marriage? I don't know.
Yeah, like I'm a better man. You can see I'm a better man. I mean, they're just ridiculous, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right there. However, I've seen guys, now I'm going to tell you guys, I've seen guys that succeed more than 50% of the time. And I'm going to tell you exactly why they're doing that. There are a couple of high value clients that I have had in the past. They went to me, despite the fact that they actually have a closing rate of over 50%. It looks like over 50% at least. That's what they're telling me. And I don't have
So
any...
50% of the women they talk to, they get a phone number. But
sort of, yeah. But here comes the thing. Yeah, let me finish here. When I analyzed why he got such a high rate of women giving their phone number and contact details, it's because he didn't have the courage to attract women that he find attractive. Meaning that he went to women that was not universally attractive, that was just easy to go to and just doing whatever you're doing, because I don't feel so intimidated. And with all fairness, all respect to all women out there, here's the reality. If that guy, my previous client, if he goes to women that he don't find that attractive because it's easy for him to go and talk with her, that woman will most likely not be attractive universally. Meaning that she probably don't have, if any, male attention.
Hmm.
Then I can understand why that guy get around 50% closing rate. But we now
Well,
just
and
talk
there's
about,
also Yeah, well, and there's also just capitalizing on the high moment, right? So if I talk to a woman for a couple minutes and I get her kind of energized and excited, I can very easily pull my phone out and go, "Oh, what's your Instagram?"
yeah.
Right? And she's like, and she feels compelled to give her Instagram, but that doesn't mean it's converting. So sure, if you're going after women that you're not so attracted to, and you do it with some vigor, and you're a reasonably good looking guy, and you have reasonable social skills, and you can capitalize on a high moment and ask her for an Instagram exchange really quickly, then sure, maybe you can get over a 50% close ratio, but it's not the type of closing ratio that I consider a true number
So
close.
now
So
let's talk about the true closing radio. I know you guys want to hear it. Most of the guys are logical. I am logical. So they just want to hear a little bit about what is a realistic rate. Now, I don't recommend you to start thinking about hit rate and so on. But on the other hand, I know that most of you guys are thinking about that. So let's talk about that at least, right? So
yeah.
when I was working with James Tusk, and many of you knows James Tusk probably, on my channel at least, and Troy Francis and the London Day Game team. Even a guy like James Tusk, they're really handsome, musculous, and looking good, and he can also utilize the London Day Game model quite efficiently and precisely. When he goes to women that he find really attractive, I think that he can easily pass 7, 8 women before he got even one number.
Hmm.
And now we're talking about someone who is really, really sharp in his game. But on the other hand, he's just going with those that are super attractive as well. But with that said, let's say that you are an average man, not bad looking, not, you're an average man. You're dressing quite well, you keep your hygiene quite well, and you want to go to women that you find attractive. I'm not talking about the supermodels out there, but let's say you go to women that are, cute and good looking. I believe that most of my clients, based on my experience, those that can actually pull things off quite good, I would actually say that 1 out of 10 is probably where it lays. That's what I believe when it comes
Yeah,
to women
yeah.
that have some sort of male attention. Doesn't have to be the biggest, but that is the reality here. I can't say that you're going to 4 women and you're going to have a date. That is not the average. It is about 1 of 8, 1 to 10 approaches. That is the reality. And now we're talking about women that are pretty, not only for you, but for most men. What do you
Yeah,
say, Erik?
I would say a closing ratio is somewhere between 10 and 30%. And what I mean by 30% being on the high end, that's if you're in a really good streak. If you're really in the zone, you're socially warmed up, and you going after women that you are sincerely attracted to. I actually believe that when your game is dialed in properly, it will work better on women that you're actually attracted to. Women can sense when an interaction is hollow. Women can sense when a guy is just kind of attracted to her, or, you know, so yeah, going after women that you're sincerely attracted to, 10 to 30% is normal. You talk to 10 women, you get 2 phone numbers, and maybe one of those actually converts to a date, right? And I'm talking about playing solid game as well. If you have to get a quick phone number because you're busy and she's busy, so be it. But I like to open a set that I'm sincerely attracted to, build a solid connection, and get a solid phone number. That is a 10, 20%, and at best 30% closing ratio. I've had some anomalous moments where I've gotten 5 out of 5 phone numbers in a row. Sure, that can happen. But when you average it out over the next 5, 10, 15 approaches, you're not going 20 for 20.
No.
You're not even going to go 10 for 10. So 5 for
So
5,
yeah.
I've gone 5 for 5.
So what I meant actually, I was not thinking. I was actually thinking about like a first, like she ready to go out with you. So 1 in 10 would probably be pretty realistic if you are
Sure.
you knowing what you're doing. So one date. We're not talking about phone number. One date, because phone number is a little bit. It's hard to measure phone numbers, isn't it? I mean,
Hmm.
guys are cheating as well. Even my clients are cheating as well. They're coming up and say like, you know what? Do you have Instagram? Maybe yeah. Let's just exchange Instagram without asking. How about going for coffee next week? How about going for a walk next week? You're lovely to talk with. No, they did nothing like that. They just go up and say like, you know what? By the way, before I have to go, do you mind if we swap Instagram? That is
Yeah,
not
and it's
really.
really
I mean,
bad.
it's
It's
a
really
bad
bad when
measurement.
your wingman does it. If you're in a
Yeah.
night game scenario, for example, and you start talking to a few girls and your buddy comes in with you, and then all of a sudden, within 2 or 3 minutes of him talking to one of the girls, he's pulling his phone out and getting her Instagram. I'm sitting there going, "Oh man, we just started talking to these girls. Let's have a conversation for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, then pull out our phones." I am not a fan of the get her Instagram number or Instagram contact really fast. Some guys will get the Instagram fast and then put their phone away and continue talking to her. And then sometimes they'll go for a phone number later in the interaction. But I don't like that, trying to sneak the Instagram as fast. It's like kissing a girl too soon.
Yeah.
You don't kiss a girl too soon. You don't touch her too soon. You don't try to escalate too soon. Generally speaking, don't go for a fast Instagram close or a fast phone number, only if you have to. If she's really busy, you're busy, fine. Make it a quick one if you have to. But yeah, these are little, if it makes the guy feel better to get an Instagram, it gives him a little confident boost. Okay, I'll let him have his little confidence boost a few times, but then I'm gonna have to tell him the reality and say, listen, uh, this you got to slow it down.
I,
You got to slow it down.
absolutely. I mean, as we always talked about, is that you need to get into the emotional connection to a certain point
Mhm.
before attraction
Mhm.
can occur. And when you have established emotional connection, which takes some time, it's nothing that just come from thin air. Learning to know someone take its time and its pace. And of course, I mean, if you're going to talk with someone who have a mental disorder, she's a sex addict, oh, maybe it will work to go directly. But except for those exceptions, you go into the mainstream, like the general rule of all women, then it would take time before you established, a certain amount of safety and trust, a certain amount of emotional connection, before you can start with what we call in the academic area relationship building process. You see, it takes time before you can get into that stage. And just
Mhm.
going in and asking for an Instagram or a phone number out of thin air, she might give it to you, but I will not even calculate that as a success. You see,
Yeah,
that
and
is,
see,
yeah.
the problem is too, is it can actually be detrimental. So some guys will get the Instagram really fast and think, okay, I got the Instagram, and they think it's a good thing. Or they'll get the Instagram real fast and then continue talking to her and think, well, I got her Instagram, but no big deal. No, actually, if you try to get her contact information too soon, you are actually creating negative attraction, or negative element one, as I call it in my book. Um, she needs, generally speaking, a bit more than that. She can be mildly attracted to a guy early on. She can feel some sensation of interest, and this guy's intriguing, or he's good looking, or whatever. But to truly get attraction spiraling up to what I call equilibrium,
Mhm.
as you've described it, like you said, it takes time. It does not happen that fast. It's a process.
So guys, here I can also mention, you've seen me talking about this one over and over again on my channel, but I'm saying this again. Holistic attraction is different for men and women. So when a guy go and see a beautiful woman, her beauty is pretty close to most guys' holistic attraction. So if a guy look at that beautiful woman and he feels super attracted to her, and then we're going to see like how far is that attraction from his holistic attraction for that woman, meaning all the attraction, we're talking about personality, everything included. It is pretty close for men, but it's not nearly as close for women. So even though you are pretty good looking, you're dressing well, you have the right smile, the right smirk, the right charm, Do you think that her holistic attraction for you is high? The answer is no. It's not high. It's not high at all. You just maybe passed the first stage of, like a segment of the holistic attraction, but you're not close to have any holistic attraction when it comes to that woman. That attraction has to be built up with time throughout conversations. And there is, countless of scientific report, scientific evidence to support this claim, this hypothesis. We need to let her brain work in a way that spark attraction, bonding, emotional connection, emotional chemistry, safety and trust. It takes time for a woman's brain to get all that. And when you reach all that, then she will sense the holistic attraction for you. But as Erik said, this holistic attraction doesn't exist in the beginning. It doesn't matter how cool you are. It doesn't exist.
Some women have even,
Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. I was going to say some women have even been conditioned that when they are attracted to a guy physically, right, they immediately actually have a trust wall that goes up, because maybe they've had some bad experiences with good-looking charmers, right? So, or oftentimes a guy will be good looking and she'll think, oh, that's a good looking guy. And then 3 seconds later, he does something to make an ass of himself. And she's turned off. So personality-based attraction is something that does take most women time to flesh out. It is, okay, he's a good-looking guy, but, I've learned to not make snap judgments and attachments to his personality just based on his physical appearance. So it's called not being shallow, is what that is. I'm going to generalize here. Women are generally less shallow than men. So
Yeah, there's no
we see
question
a
about
hot
it.
girl, oh my God, she's so hot. And then, we start worshiping her and we don't even know her.
Yeah,
It's
it is actually a sad truth in some way, but it is what it is. That's the reality.
mm,
And it's not so what Erik said there now, and what I also saying, we're saying the same thing basically. It's not only something that we believe in, it's also being proven neuroscientifically. So in the area of neuroscience, we can easily see that beautiful men, charismatic men, men that have the charm and so on, doesn't trigger the neurotransmitters that is linked to that sexual attraction, the feeling of I want you, I desire you. It doesn't happen so much for women when they see the charming guy, the handsome guy. But it works beautifully for men of some reason. I mean, when men see
mm,
beautiful women, the neurotransmitters just spike into the roof. It's just crazy. It makes all the behavioral scientists, scratching their heads and trying to figure out why that is. Well, there are reasons. We're not going to go through them here, but that is the reality. Women don't feel so much attraction for any man in the beginning holistically. They can see a guy and feel like, wow, this guy is super handsome. All right, it can easily be interpreted as, wow, she wants him. But
yeah.
is that reality? No, she doesn't want him. She thinks he's super attractive. And if you want to ask the woman, oh, do you want to go and sleep with him? She will say, no way. I don't know this guy. I don't know how he makes me feel. And here comes the thing. Your attractiveness level is actually directly correlated of how you make her feel. Much more than what she feels when she see you objectively. I mean, it's completely
Mhm.
different thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I break attraction down into 3 levels. I keep going back to my book. But as you know, that my book
Yeah.
has been something I've been working on tirelessly, and it's getting closer and closer to the finish line, the vortex of love. But I talk about 3 levels of attraction. So, level one attraction is that knee-jerk, instant attraction that we can feel for somebody, right? Level two attraction is attraction that is sufficient enough to warrant going on a date or exploring the interaction further. That is what I call level two attraction. And then if the woman actually follows through and meets us on a date or goes on an instant date with us on the spot, maybe to get some coffee or a smoothie, we have now passed level two and we're on to level three attraction. And then to get attraction fully spiraled up to equilibrium to the point where the woman actually sees herself in a relationship with a guy where she feels there's the potential for love, that is takes even more time. So if we can trigger some kind of instant attraction in the woman, it's great, bonus, but that is not an excuse to not continue attraction building because like you said, most women don't feel level one attraction like we do. If they do feel level one attraction, it's usually very mild. And as you said, the neurotransmitters that truly are in charge of igniting her attraction, those neurotransmitters are not even being targeted. She's more mildly stimulated or interested, or just a few visual cues will trigger this mild level one attraction in her. Um, they don't feel that same impact that men feel generally.
Yeah, 100%. And I want you guys to really think about the mild part. It is exactly what Eric says. It is very mild. So that gives you also an opportunity to not in some way, what can I say, disqualify yourself. Because many guys go up there to a woman and she feel instantly that, oh, you're not for me. And then the guy is like, okay, it's game over. She doesn't like me. And because she doesn't like me immediately, I have nothing to give. You see, I have nothing to give. And then the guys are disqualifying themselves. I've seen
Mhm.
so many times when women really didn't like a guy at all physically. She didn't, it didn't trigger her at all. And that guy became the most handsome, the most lovable guy for her that you could even imagine after some time. I've seen it over and
Mhm.
over again. So
Certainly.
in that way, guys, don't disqualify yourself either. Don't do it because women need time to start feeling real attraction for you. Holistic attraction is what I call it. Equilibrium is what you call it, but I say holistic attraction. But that's basically the same thing. The holistic attraction includes a lot of different factors that have to emerge together to be, strong holistically. So, with that said, now let's get fast into the last part, and that is the approach itself. So, let's say we are let's start with day game. So, let's say we are in a day game setting, Eric, and you want to teach someone to approach a woman they see on the street. What should they do? How should they open?
Yeah, so what I typically encourage a guy to have is a default opener that he uses if he can't come up with something original in the moment. So I want him to come up with some sort of no excuse opener where if he sees an attractive woman and his mind goes blank and he can't think of something unique to say in the moment, he at least has his default opener to go back to. And in this type of situation, I am generally a fan of sort of going direct if we're talking about a day game approach. But I typically don't recommend complimenting her on her looks. So I'm a fan of complimenting her on her energy, for example. You can walk up to a woman and say, "Hey, I saw you walking by, and I had to come over here and tell you that you have really nice energy. I'm Erik, by the way. Smile, introduce yourself, right?" So if I can't think of anything to say, unique or spontaneous, I at least have my opener where I can compliment her on her energy. But what I typically like to train guys to do is come up with something spontaneous and unique. Because I believe a good, at least 50%, if not 70% of the time, you can come up with something original to say in the moment. It's maybe not going to be the most highly original thing, but it's at least somewhat different and calibrated to the moment. Maybe when a guy's first starting out, he can only be spontaneous 20% of the time or 30% of the time. But I found that the average guy can be spontaneous somewhere between 50 to 70% of the time. For example, we had a boot camp. I was taught a boot camp a few months ago, and there were these women that were looking through a store window through the glass, and the store was closed, and they were looking at some shoes. And, the client walked up to the women and looked inside the window like this and looked at the women and said, "Just use your elbow, break the glass, take the shoes and run." And they laughed. He came up with that spontaneously in the moment. So I am a big fan of sort of giving guys many different examples of spontaneous things that I've said, spontaneous things that I've seen other clients say, and trying to exercise his creative muscles. But you got to have your no excuse opener as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the second part is something that you will do automatically. Most of my clients doing it automatically once they have
Mm.
done X amount of approaches. It just become quite naturally to just take situational based thing and make an opener out of it. That's
Mhm.
quite natural. But you as a beginner, on the other hand, most now we're talking about 90% of all my clients that haven't been approaching women, they're now going to start approaching women. They need their default opener.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because the level of anxiety you feel before you approach and during the approach itself will mess your mind to
Mhm.
be
Mhm.
creative with your opener, that you need a default actually.
Mhm.
It might
Mhm.
sound a little bit gamey, but you need to know what to say to open with, because that is also going to reduce your approach anxiety if you know exactly what to say for the first 15 seconds.
Yeah, if you have a system, if you know your opener, if you have some material down, it's going to give you that confidence of what to say and do, and it externalizes your fear as well. Instead of
Yeah.
being so in here, you can focus on your opener.
Yeah. So here's another thing. So I've tried a lot of different openers, also with close to 1,000 clients that I have as well. And I started with my own favorite, and that was like, "Excuse me, I know this is spontaneous, but I saw you, and I think you look really nice. I had to come as a hi." That was my
Mhm.
first opener that I used to train guys. And many times I tried to exchange the nice into interesting. "I think you look interesting. I just wanted to say hi."
Mhm. Mhm.
Worked beautifully. But then I was thinking that, is it the opener itself that was so great that she wanted to keep talking with me? Or was it just like I went up and started talking with her and that was the big deal? So I changed my opener to, "Excuse me, I know this is spontaneous, but I saw you and I have a question. I have a question." She looked at me and said, "Yeah, how's your day?"
Mhm.
Worked beautifully as well. Another one, that when I went to Serbia and I had a boot camp with James Tusk, I noticed that longer form of openers was hard to pull off there. Maybe their level of understanding English was sort of limited, even though they could speak English. So I just went up and said, "Excuse me, I saw you and I just wanted to say hi. I'm Michael." Worked beautifully. So I used that opener in here in the Western world, Sweden, Norway, UK, Poland, and I just go up to women and say, "Excuse me, I saw you and I just wanted to say hi. I'm Michael. What is your name?" Worked
Mhm.
beautifully, because my philosophy is that it is the interaction itself that's going to matter. Your intent is to just say hi and start a normal conversation. I emphasizing a lot of the power of curiosity, that when you start talking to a woman, having a conversation, you have to have a purpose in that conversation itself.
Mhm.
Curiosity should be the drive force to push the conversation forward, because when you talk with a woman, you want to ask something about her, you want to be curious about her, so you really want to have that normal dynamic conversation, back and forth, collaborative conversation. So opener is just a very small part to get into a normal conversation. I emphasizing a lot to have a conversation that is based on you being curious towards her, you being interested towards her, rather than trying to, you know, focus on being interesting and saying a lot of interesting things. Have your main focus on being interested. And there's also something that comes from the academic faculty and the research that's made when it comes to influence. If you want to be interesting, being interested has shown being a lot more powerful than trying to be interesting. And
Mhm.
remember, this girl doesn't know you at all. She never seen you before. So the amount of curiosity you're going to apply in that conversation is going to be a big factor. And you, what do you think?
Yeah, when you demonstrate curiosity, you're demonstrating that you're not completely sold by her. You're just interested in getting to know her more, right? This is kind of tied into qualification. So there's also the idea that emotions can be contagious. They're not always contagious, but they tend to be contagious. So if you are in a curious state of mind and you're interested in her, that emotion, if you will, that subcommunication of curiosity and interest could transfer over to her and could cause her to become curious about you as well. So I do think that curiosity, uh, finding out if she's interesting. I like how you turned the direct day game opener into a question as well. There's many different ways to use kind of a direct day game opener, right? Because even though you're asking a question, you still are somewhat going direct. You know, she's going to sort of infer that you are approaching her because you're attracted to her. So yeah, no, I think this is good stuff, you know. And I'll say this about Serbia. I noticed this as well because I did a boot camp in Belgrade as well,
Mhm.
uh, with mystery. The I'm generalizing here, but if you approach a random person on the street in Belgrade, they think you want something from them. Are you trying to sell them something? Are you asking them for money? Are they whatever they're doing, right? I found that quite a few girls speak English there. And just generally, they're not used to random people approaching them. If you go to the streets of Belgrade and walk around, you will see a lot of people just walking to their destination and not communicating much. And they can sometimes even look a little bit unfriendly. They're actually very friendly, very social people. They're just more introverted and stoic and minding their own business, right? They're smart, man. No matter
Really
where you
fun.
go, no matter what country you're in, these women are smart and they're intuitive. And we can go indirect during the daytime, but truly do an indirect approach where the woman does not sense any interest whatsoever from you, that you're just social and starting a friendly conversation. There's an art to that. And I do believe in finding the style of game that works best for a guy. So I think of directness and indirectness on a spectrum. I don't think of it as black or white. I'm either going direct or I'm going indirect. There's all sorts of in between. And it's about your ability to calibrate your directness level in the moment according to what you're sensing from the woman and also according to how you want to run your own game. You know, you can go more direct if you like that style of game. You can go indirect if you prefer going indirect. You can calibrate a little bit to what you think she's going to respond best to, but you don't want to over calibrate to the woman because at some point you have to let your true colors shine. You can't just be a chameleon and adjust your game to every single woman you're talking to. You know, so we have sort of what women respond to the best in a general sense that we know according to the science and everything. But then there's also how do you want to run your game? There's the unique side of it as well. And funny enough, when you are running a more unique style of game, you are actually more in alignment with the science than you think, because not being afraid to be yourself and take the lead and be unique and be your own man, this is also an attractive quality that's backed by science as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's also very difficult to put a real data on it as well, because
mm,
I can't say that a pure strong intent by just going up and say, "Excuse me, this is spontaneous. But I saw you. I think you look really cute. I had to come and say hi." That is a very direct approach to go.
mm,
Or you go up and say like, you can just go up and say, "Excuse me, I'm just curious. I have a question." And you could actually go with, now I'm not emphasizing too much of indirect game, but you could say that I would like to have a great recommendation about something, and she will give you that recommendation. If you want to go to a great restaurant, she will give you the recommendation of going to her specific great restaurant, and then you can just translate it by saying that, okay, but I'm just curious, what make that restaurant so good for you? And you shift and leaning towards curiosity towards her, like, oh, but now I'm curious why she think that place is so interesting or so good. And then you quiet, and then now suddenly you're in a conversation itself. Is that a lot worse than a direct intent approach? I don't think so. Really, I don't think so. I think that is not the main factor they're going to dictate if you're going to succeed or not. It's more about how strong your conversational skills is, how well you are having a conversation that are based on curiosity, that makes you feel good in your presence, with you being unthreatening. Because
Mm.
before, as John Howard, one the professor of psychology and focuses on psychotherapy and relationship building, he said that as a huge rule for, and now he generalized it, like for the main part of all the women, if you haven't obtained a certain amount of emotional connection, which is based on safety and trust, nothing will sink in. That
Mm.
door remain closed. So it doesn't matter if you're the coolest guy in the world, the door is still remain closed. Meaning
Hmm.
that you have to pass the door through emotional connection. And how do we create emotional connection? Well, emotional connection is based on understanding. Understanding means empathy. If we can understand her perspectives and we are curious about what she think about things and so on, and we can also make the conversation dynamic by sharing something about us to make that conversation feel a two-way street, even though it's more about her. That is how we get into that emotional chemistry state. But thinking that emotional connection doesn't matter because it's the coolness that counts, then you're really out on deep waters with zero scientific backing. And I don't want to be the guy that based things on exceptions. I want to go with the main rule. How does it work exactly?
Oh yeah, being a cool guy but untrustworthy. That's, women see through that again.
Yeah.
They can see a guy and go, okay, he seems cool. He's dressed well. He's got his swag. He's got his cocky smirk on his face. Okay, he's got a few women by his side as well. But if there's a shady vibe about the guy, she's likely not going to be attracted to him. Now, there are certain types of women that are attracted to that. You look kind of like the bad guy in a movie, you know, you look kind of like a seedy nightclub promoter or something like that. You look like trouble. You look like you have some cocaine in your pocket. There are some women that are drawn to this almost like evil vibe, right? Like some guys, when they smile at you and they look at you, there's almost like an evilness about them, but they're like devilishly handsome. Okay. So there are some women that are drawn to this devilishly handsome guy and this devilishly cool vibe, right? But if we're going to generalize again, no. Women don't trust this guy. They're not interested in having him come home with her for one night even. Maybe they make an exception for one night if they're adventurous. Okay, I'm going to take that shady looking sleazy guy home with me, okay? But for a relationship, for anything solid, meaningful, there needs to be that trust, like you said.
Yeah.
This is conveyed in what I call element two.
Mm.
Element two is where she's doing her best to kind of put her emotions aside and look at a guy in a very rational way. And funny enough, it does give her an emotional connection, though. It's a peaceful, trusting emotion. So yeah. And then element four is more specifically the domain of the emotional connection in my model. Basically, I have an interchangeable superstructure is what I like to call it, a customizable superstructure. So everything you're saying is spot on per usual, Michael. You have great insights.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, we are on the same page here, and there is no question about that cool guy with that bad boy vibe. Still belongs to the exception of the rule,
Mhm.
going to the exception of the rule of women. And his style might work on 1 in 40. But what about the other 39 attractive women that didn't pay attention to him? They didn't want him to come closer. They might be amused a little bit, but they didn't want him to come closer. I mean, do you want to go with one every 40 women if all those 40 women were available? I don't think
Yeah.
so, right?
To be clear, there is a bad boy that some women are drawn to. There is a
Yeah.
bad boy type of thing going on that women are drawn to, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. You don't have to be a nice guy or a bad boy. You can actually embody some of the attractive qualities of the bad boy without being shady and sleazy. And you can actually adopt many of the qualities of the nice guy without being weak and supplicating. It's not an either or thing. So
Yeah, but that's actually very, very true, because when you look at the bad boy, I mean, he actually took action, and because he took action, he looks like a winner of the bad boy style. Many times it's just the action he took. And then, even though he is a bad boy, did we actually analyze how he spoke with the woman? Did he really listen to the woman? Did he use uh, subconsciously or unconsciously a lot of the right conversational tools that actually create influence? We don't know that, do we? And then suddenly it's very easy to assume that, oh, but he's looking cool and therefore she wanted him. Another side of the spectrum is that what we saw that guy succeed with, wow, is such an amazing guy going up and actually getting those beautiful women. We didn't see what happened later on. We didn't see what happened
Mhm.
behind the curtains. A lot of women feel amused and entertained by those guys, but that is just that part. It's almost like a segment of life of that belongs to the amusement and entertainment, that is not linked to relationship at all. It might even not even be linked at anything sexual at all, but we interpret it as she wants to have sex with him, she wants to be with him, she wants to have be intimate with that guy. And many times that's not even the case either. I've seen a lot of guys looking like they are Superman towards women, but it just came to a certain point. And when he tried to be intimate with her, start kissing her, start being, close to her, he just died, so to speak.
Yeah, there
So,
are a lot of guys
yeah,
that are good at the front side of game, but they're not good at following up with the woman. They're not good at escalating an interaction. And there are a lot of guys that can even get a lot of women into bed, but does the woman actually stick around? So there's a bunch of stuff in there that's hard to quantify for sure. And even the best of the best guys uh, in the game, if you will, in the dating realm, they're human too. You know what
yeah,
I mean? If you talk to their girlfriends and find out how they are behind closed doors, they have sensitivities, they have weakness, they're not these perfect people. And the same thing with the hot girl. These women that we put on pedestals, if you get to know her and you see her without makeup and you see her when she's sick and you see her when she's having a bad day and she's mentally and emotionally frazzled, she's a human as well.
yeah. That's the
So
thing. Women are not difficult as most guys think. They're just human if you know how to communicate with them. But just ask yourself, as a man, how are you in front of beautiful women? Are you really a human yourself, or are you almost
mhm,
like a compromised robot?
mhm,
Because you
mhm.
can't behave normally when you are, when you are around beautiful women. Most guys can't. So I'm not criticizing you specifically, but most guys can't be themselves around beautiful women. But if you can be
Mhm.
real and normal towards them, they will be real and normal towards you. And now something can really happen here. It's like this sick mindset of the survival of the fittest thing. Like, the
Mhm.
cooler you are, the more handsome you are, the more is a gateway of succeeding with the most attractive women out there. Absolutely not true, for sure. Even though if passive value have some sort of value, this is not what dictates beautiful women wanting to be with you because of the coolness. It's just a small segment of the holistic attraction. So
Yeah, and
you
it
have to just
yeah, and
release that
it
idea.
yeah, and it definitely depends on the woman. There's some evidence that the more attractive the woman thinks she is compared to other women, and the more attractive she perceives herself, according to the guy in question, the more she starts to look at the lover provider value offers kind of in tandem. But the personality based connection, the emotional connection, this deeper rapport. Do I align with this guy on deeper levels, right? What I call social element two and romantic element two. This is very important because you can have all the money in the world, you can have fancy cars, you can go on lavish trips and stuff. But if the woman actually wants to be with you in a relationship, she needs to trust you. She needs to feel like you line up in more fundamental ways. So by placing too much emphasis on your lifestyle, you're missing the boat. I mean, I work with, as you do, I'm sure as well, many successful clients that have everything going for them in the lifestyle department. but they don't have their dating game dialed in.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have that, the communication skills, the realness, you know, like you said, you know, there has to be a realness to the interaction.
Yeah. And what you said that about, the more attracted the women think they are, the higher value of passive traits they can choose for men. Is it is true actually, based on that woman having met a guy that can create emotional connection. And creating emotional connection is not easy. It requires
Yeah.
conversational skills with strong intent, like conversational. You have to practice conversational skills and conversational flow with strong intent. It's nothing that guys are born with. Empathetic listening skills are hard to learn by itself. You have to be through, guided practice over and over again. So with that said, women that haven't met a guy that can create emotional connection, it's very easy for the women to think logically about that as well. It's the same as preferences. I mean, for me, myself, as an Asian, I've been dating a lot of women that were completely into me that in the beginning never wanted to date an Asian, for example.
Hmm.
There are lots of women that just want this long, tall, blonde guy with blue eyes. That's the only man she wants. She's 100% certain of it. And then she meets someone who is in the complete opposite. But he was a very good guy, created emotional connection. She felt safe. She felt really good being with him. All of those preferences was just, was down to the drain and didn't matter at all. This guy became
Yeah.
a new preference. So, guy, you have to just take that with you.
Yeah, it depends on how rigid her ideal is, you know. If she has a very rigid ideal in mind, sometimes through good game, for lack of a better term, she realizes that some of these preferences don't matter when you override them, you know, with good game. So there's that factor as well, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So let's get into the last fast point, and that is the night game. So how should we approach women differently in night games than in day game?
Yeah, so once again, many different factors at play here. So I am a fan of a guy developing a style of game that works best for him, right? But generally speaking,
Mhm.
during night game, women are in groups. They're not alone. They're with friends. They're with other girlfriends. They're with girlfriends and guy friends. Generally speaking, I'm a fan of the indirect opener. I am a fan of befriending the group. I am a fan of letting her see me interact with her friends and be accepted by her group and indirectly triggering attraction in her before showing too many overt signs of interest. If you walk up to a girl while she's with a group of friends and you hit on her directly, I'm not saying it never works. I'm not saying it can't work. I'm not saying that if you practice doing that over and over, that you can't get better and better at doing that and recognizing good opportunities. You can certainly go direct at night, even if she's in a group of people. But if we're going to generalize here, you are making the woman decide on the spot if she wants to entertain a longer conversation with you without knowing you, right? Because if you walk up and tell a girl that she's pretty, she's not going to, it's not just, you know, thank you. It's if she is warm and receptive to your direct approach, that means you're going to sit there and chat with her for a few more minutes. You're going to start asking her qualification questions. And she's basically having to decide on the spot, do I want to talk to this guy for more than a few minutes, right? And what are people programmed to say when they're not sure what to do? No, they're generally going to say no. So I am a fan of opening in what I call element two and befriending the group using a platonic form of attraction, charisma. You can be charismatic and try to generate some attraction, but I'm going to remove the male female dynamic from attraction. I'm going to use a neutered form of attraction, if you will, and I'm going to try to attract the group and bond with the group and befriend them. And when I feel like there's some attraction and interest being generated in her, then maybe I'm going to slowly work my way to her. But that's a high level conceptual general way of doing it that I've found works quite well. And it's very similar to uh, Mystery's M3 model. Mystery is one of the pioneers of the linear M3 model, which consists of opening, indirect, demonstrating value, looking for IOIs, and then transitioning to what we call A3, right? If we're going to speak the M3 language. So I am a believer in the indirect night approach.
So can you give us an example of how to open up indirectly?
Yeah, so I may open the group and address everybody in the group. Hey guys, quick question. I got to get back to my friends in a second. I will use a false time constraint. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but it does matter because women are weary of the random guy. Is this guy going to open a conversation with us and then just make himself at home? And now we have to figure out how to politely get rid of him. So I am a fan of the false time constraint. Hey guys, I got to get back to my friends in a second. They can't behave without me. Savages, right? Uh, quick question for you though. Is it possible to fall in love in 3 days? So check this out. I will, before they have a chance to answer that question, I'll say, check this out. Let me add some context for you. My buddy went to Brazil. He was there for a month. The last 3 days of his trip, he met some amazing woman. They went on walks, they went to museums, they had good food, they had a little sexy time. And now we can't get him to leave the house. Like he swears he's going through a breakup. And I'm like, dude, you fell in lust. You didn't fall in love. We've all experienced vacation lust. Or did he fall in love? Is he actually grieving right now? Should I be more sympathetic? So I will open with an opener like this and I will address the group. And again, the purpose of the opener is not to generate some huge interest in the content. It's to allow them to acclimate to my personality. So
Mm.
that's one of many examples of how we could open the group indirect.
So one of the great thing here, even though my approach looks a little bit different, but one of the good thing here is that what you're doing is sparking curiosity. You want to know what she think about things. That is one of the main thing we're talking about when it comes to being curious towards the other person. It's like you're curious about what she think about that particular part, even though it might not, even though it is sort of a gimmick. You still want to know what she think about that. Is it possible to be in love after 3 days? Would Is he in love, or was it just a lust thing? What do you think? I'm curious to hear what you think. That is basically what you communicated to her, and there is nothing better for her to like. You know what? I'm going to tell you what I think, and then she start telling you what she think. That is one of the best way to create a connection with anyone, is for them to actually start talking about what they think about things.
It's a
And
relationship-based opener. Women are a fan of talking about dating and relationships and these topics. You know, it's one of several different openers. And once again, I actually am a believer that 50% or 70% of the time, we can come up with something unique and spontaneous in the moment, but we should have default openers that we can lean back on. So I'm not advocating guys just run a bunch of scripts. But I do think that you should have a few default conversation starters. And if a girl ever even calls you out on it and says, hey, is that a canned line? Or even if you start dating her, she can say, when we first met, you told this story, you know, you can be honest with her and say, listen, starting the conversation is very difficult. Was that a canned story? Yes, it was, you know, but it's a good way to start the conversation. And guess what? I got you. So it worked, you
yeah,
know, and of course,
absolutely, yeah.
she gets to see that you're not some scripted, dishonest person throughout the relationship. It's just the attraction building phase is very tricky, especially opening. So get some tried and true material under your belt. You know, why not?
But also, could you also say a bit that that part was also to figure out what you think about that particular scenario? Forget about the story itself, but I want to see how you work mentally. I want to know. I was curious to see what you were thinking about that scenario.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like a curiosity. You can make you can actually make any kind of canned story, and it's not the story itself that matters. It's what you think about it that matters. I wanted to know
You're
what you think
gauging
about it.
you're gauging her thoughts on the subject, you're gauging her reaction, you're judging her nonverbal communication. Does she seem like a pleasant person? You know, because we're only forming a snap judgment of her as well. When I walk up and start a conversation with her group, now I'm going to find out how she truly is.
Yeah.
You know, so it's many different reasons, uh, for many different reasons, I'm going to go indirect most of the time during night. And by most of the time, I'd say 80%, 90%, maybe 20% or 10%, sometimes 30%, I'll go direct. I've experimented, again, it's a spectrum. It's not
Yeah.
direct or indirect. There's all sorts of in between. You can even be sort of in the middle where you're demonstrating some interest, but not like she can't quite read you. Hey, is this guy flirting with me or not? We're kind of right in the middle of direct and indirect. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, many times it can also be like when it comes to the curiosity part, many of my clients just go up and say the same thing as they do on a day game. But excuse me, but yeah, yeah. I have a quick question. Yeah, how's your day or how's your evening? Yeah, it's good. And then he goes directly into sharing. Yeah, you know what? I had a great day too. And you know, I really love this place. The music is perfect. The light is really great. However, I wish there would be more room for dancing. But I'm just curious, what do you think about this place? And then you're dead quiet. And then she start talking, yeah, but I think this one is good, blah 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 blah. And now they get the conversation rolling. Another way out from this is like, yeah, but if there will be another place that you find is a lot better than this one, which one is it? And then she would tell about another place, and then you get into that atmosphere. Using conversational threading, because every time you ask something, they're leaving cues in their sentence. You take those cues and you elaborate, you create new context, you create new conversation based on what she said. That
mhm.
keeps the conversation empathetic based on her, and you give her your undivided attention. So that is, but it goes through the same principle of you being curious to what she think about things, and she telling you what she think about things, whether it is this relationship thing, whether it is what she think about this, not only what she think about the club, but what makes that club good for her, what makes that other place good for her. If she could change something in that place, what would that be, for example, and so on. Listen to what she says, take those small things, ask for clarification, share a little bit about yourself, get into that depth to really understand her, and she feel great when she explaining things to you. So yeah, absolutely.
Fair.
So now we spoke quite a lot. So do you have anything last to add, Eric? It was a great
No,
conversation.
like I mentioned before, I'm really excited about my book coming out. If I could just plug my book really quick, The Vortex of Love, How to Get Women to Fall in Love with You is going to be out in a few months. I very much appreciate these interviews, Michael. I'm going to have you on my channel as well at some point soon. I'm just so busy right now. I do have a call to jump on, but as always, I really appreciate uh, your interview style. You share very insightful information. I'm in agreement with you the vast majority of the time, and I think you're doing a really good job, man. Really.
Thanks.
Oh, good stuff.
Same to you,
Thank
Eric.
you. Thank you.
And guys, we are going to have another podcast pretty soon. So stay tuned, and I see you guys in the next video.